So before I start with the presentation, let me share you one fact, sir. When you want something to be happen, the entire universe conspires to make that happen. And when it actually happens, you left wondering now what to do. This is the feeling what all the GST taxpayers currently are having. So let's move to our presentation, GST. This is what the government shows us. So GST is a sort of, you can say that, a seamless process, hassle-free ride, but actually it looks like this. So this is what GST is. There are 34 SGST state-based act. You can say that, no doubt all acts are, you can say that, at similar to various extent, but there are some, teething problems in various other acts. So what is GST? In a layman languages, everybody has a different sort of terminologies. But Alia would say GST stands for this thing, good night, sweet dreams, take care. This is again. So now let's move to this thing. GST is a consumption-based, destination-based tax, while the previous MVAT or excise is an origin-based taxation. It means that when you manufacture goods at the time of removal, you have to pay tax. In case of previous laws, excise or VAT. So this is the structure of the GST. Central sales tax, which is called CGST, which is replaced by all these taxes: excise, service tax, additional duties, surcharge, CVD and SAD. While state tax, these all taxes, what you see the downside of the layer, it's all subsumed. Now we have only two taxation, CGST, SGST. So CGST is comprised of these things, SGST is comprised of these things, and IGST is comprised only of CST and CVD and SAD. Taxes which are still continued, these are the taxes. Somebody has the myth that custom duty nahi lagega, but still basic custom duty is there. And along with that, property tax, stamp duty is always there. These are not replaced by GST curriculum. So no tax if there is a no sort of tax when in case a person exclusively engaged in exempt services, person engaged only in supply of goods which is outside the purview. There are around 2-3 category of goods: petroleum, electricity, which the government has kept outside the purview of GST. And another one, this is for most important, which is neither a supply of goods, neither a service, like an employer-employee relationship, which will not fall into the category of a GST. So
what does that mean?
Which one?
Employer.
The service by employee to employer. It means that now we'll discuss it. In reverse charge mechanism, if you hire pay on a professional basis in your organization, then you have to discharge the service tax liability. You can say that the GST liability on behalf of that professional because he is unregistered.
So then it's not no tax, no?
Which one?
The employer will bear.
Yeah, there is no point of taxation in that. In case of employer-employer relationship. Why GST needed? These are the quick parameters that the government has suggested, that it will increases your GDP, elimination of your cascading effects, seamless flow of credit, simplification of taxes. Obviously, the first main reason is broadening the tax base. Now, if you are all registered dealer who are dealing with unregistered dealer, they have to bear the hit of unregistered dealer GST. So this is a quick terminology: CGST, SGST, IGST, which we have discussed in earlier what CGST stands for. So these are all the possible rate structure till date: 5, 12%, 18%, 28%. Along with this, we have a composition scheme module also that we will discuss it in the next module. So this is the main important credit utilization of an ITC, input tax credit. IGST can be utilized first, should be priority wise. If you see this, IGST can be utilized first, again IGST, then again CGST, then SGST. It should be in order only. CGST first, utilized against IGST, then CGST. Then we will discuss it with an example. No cross, you can say that availment of a credit by offsetting CGST credit with SGST credit. So this is a quick example. So if you see this tax invoice A, this is within the state transaction, then how does it work? Tax A invoice raised an invoice to this B. He's saying cost of goods is 100, SGST 10, this is 10%, and then CGST 10%. Total comes to 120. So he has purchased the goods. Now B is going to sell it to C. This thing. So what he has done, he raised again invoice, tax invoice raised by B to C with cost of goods sold 200, SGST 10%, 2020. Now this 2020 is going to be adjusted against this credit 1010. So the balance 20 is liable to pay. So now this again B sells to C. So again this thing classification 300, SGST 10%, 30 rupees, CGST 30 rupees. So this again offset by this 30 by this credit of 20 rupees. So it's a one-to-one mapping. But the complication comes into interstate transaction when you are making a sale cross border. You can say that outside the state. Before we understand this model, first of all, I want to share it because GST is not only a tax change. You have to change all your business strategies from finance to supply chain, from your, you can say that information technology, from your pricing policies, because it will hit you everywhere. So it is completely a transformation of your business in comparison to all your strategies. So this IGST model, let's discuss with an example. So this tax invoice A sale to B, this thing, he raised an invoice, this is a local state transaction, he raised an invoice. If you see, everyone has the booklet, does anyone have a short of books? When this tax invoice raised by A sales to B. So A raised a tax invoice, cost of goods sold 100 rupees. He is a local sale, then CGST, SGST at the rate of 10%. When B sales to interstate transaction, B sales to C. At that time, tax invoice raised by B is cost of goods 200 and IGST, he levies IGST. And IGST is the sum of CGST and SGST. So here he levies 20%, that 20% comes to 40 rupees, that is 240 rupees. And when this B is going to sell it to C, so he raised a tax invoice this way, that is again a local sale. Cost of goods 300, then CGST, SGST 1010. Now you just have to see this credit, how this credit is going to be utilized. This is more important. First, CGST is how much the B has to pay is 30 rupees. But he already has the credit of IGST of rupees 40 here. So he can take first adjust this CGST liability against SGST. This thing. IGST का जो 40 rupees है, first he adjusts against this CGST. Now he again remain left a surplus of 10 rupees that he is offset against SGST. So now final is that he is supposed to pay an SGST of 20 rupees. Any confusing with this? But that's why I share you this presentation so that you can see one-to-one mapping.
Just break it into like really simple.
Just talk in English.
Just talk our language.
Can I have a marker pen?
They are on the table.
Let's start with this.
Probably we don't know what is the first heading.
Basic. Suppose Avnish makes a sale to Jainam. This is within the state transaction. Okay. Avnish raise a bill to Jainam, say 100 rupees. Avnish levies SGST, CGST. Because whenever any transaction happens within the state, he has to levy two tax. SGST and CGST. So Avnish are doing a sale to Jainam at rupees 100 rupees.
Somebody can write me. You want me to write?
No, I will do that. This is an intra-state transaction. Aviz is making a sale of rupees 100 to Janam. He will levy, suppose rate is 12%. For simplification, put it 10%.
So if it's intra-state, then why would CGST be applicable?
Because this is a combination. In intra-state, some part of revenue is shared by central government, some is shared by state government. That is the whole purpose of GST.
So SGST is anyways applicable because it is within the state.
Within the state, exactly. And
Okay,
CGST is for the part of the central revenue.
And this is applicable only for goods, not for services.
Even for services. This is for both supply of goods, either of services.
And
What
actually,
happens if
to
you
be
pay-
precise, it's going to be half, right?
Yeah.
I'm under 80% tax slab, 9% is SGST, 9% is CGST. For intra-state, it is fixed.
The rate is this,
Tax slab
it may be 5%, 12%, 18, 28, but for simplification we have put it 10 so that the figure doesn't.
So but it is always 50-50%.
Yes, always 50-50. Yeah.
Primarily in the invoice, this bifurcation has to be mentioned, is it? Or
Exactly, you have to precisely mention, we will discuss in invoice rules also.
12%, then 66%
6%.
everything. 5% is of guidance.
Yes, but government in the act, they have specified that they can increase the rate to 40% max charge. They can keep that window open so that whenever they are possible, they can come up with the amendment. So let's discuss this. This is 10. So Avish pays an invoice of rupees 120 to Janam. Janam has done the payment. This transaction is closed. Okay. So Avnish is liable to pay SGST, CGST. See, assume that this is the first July transaction. Avnish doesn't have any input credit line. Okay, so that now Janam is doing an interstate sale, a Gujarat-based client. So what is going to levy? First, IGST. So Janam is going to say, let's say margin is so high, 200 rupees. So he levy IGST at the rate 20%. This should be sum of CGST and SGST. That 20 comes to 40 rupees. Here it comes to 40 rupees. Now how Janam discharges his liability? That is main important. This 40 rupees is going to first, Janam has a credit. First he will take the credit of this thing, CGST. Because priority wise Janam supposed to pay IGST to the government. So he will take the credit in his books of accounts, say rupees 10. Then he will take the credit of SGST.
Credit meaning that amount is not being
Not being
set off.
paid. And out of 40 rupees, Janam is liable to pay 20 rupees.
Correct.
Exactly. So this comes Janam's discharges liability of 20 rupees of IGST. Got it? Any query till that?
No.
Now we going to third layer.
So essentially, in this particular example, in his return, he'll end up paying 20 rupees as a challan amount.
Sorry.
In this particular example, the person who sold cross state will, having adjusted 20 rupees because that was his credit,
Exactly.
10 of CGST and 10 of SGST comes back to 20. Now 20 is the challan amount. He has to pay on challan.
Yeah. Janam supposed to discharge it before the, you can say that 20th of the next month.
Following month.
Yeah.
20 are the next subsidy.
But then we will discuss it. Don't go with the payments and all.
Just one last thing, is it applicable only for J1 or it is applicable for everything?
Sorry, what's your question, Sharon? What's your question?
This is the same transaction, same pair of goods which is being transacted from Avnish to Janam to another person.
So if it is the same set of goods.
Yeah. Now what happens is there are other services like, for example, MTN is going to charge me some money, and they will charge me some.
That is a part of input tax credit rules. There are total 14 set of rules: registration, refund, assessment, input tax credit.
Don't go there.
We will go one by one.
One by one, yeah.
If you put it everything in one go, then entire work of two
Just
sets.
forget the other.
For interstate, we have to pay IGST.
Exactly.
And for within the state,
You have to pay CGST and SGST. Correct? Now we are
CGST is
going
not
for.
applicable if it is an interstate case.
Sorry.
CGST
Maharashtra,
will
Gujarat,
not be
CGST
applicable
नहीं
if it is between
No,
two
you
states.
No, this is called IGST. That is a combination of CG and SG.
but the rate is same.
Rate is same.
But it is one.
IGST, the name is not inter-state GST, the name is integrated GST.
No, this
Central is getting losing money every day.
IGST. Now we are going to third layer of transaction. That is main important. Yeah, please.
This IGST things is there, IGST, will set off against CGST and SGST. The only SGST will set off, not CGST, right?
Which one? No. You can set it off both. CGST, SGST set off is not possible.
Okay.
But you can do IGST. You can take set off with CGST and SGST. I will show you. Okay, how does it? Now the third layer of transaction. Suppose this Gujarat-based vendor has sold in his state only. Suppose he sold it at 500 rupees. Now SGST, he levied SGST again CGST at the rate of 10%, say 50 at the rate of 10%. So the total goes to 100. Now this vendor is supposed to discharge how much liability? 100 rupees. So let's put it here, 100 rupees. Total liability. So now first, this is a local state transaction, but he has the credit of IGST. So how does it utilize? Is this IGST first? It means that 50 rupees CGST first utilized against IGST credit should be first utilized against CGST. So then less IGST credit, say 40 rupees, then he will make the payment of 10 rupees here and he will discharge this 50 rupees SGST by cash by debiting his electronic ledger account. So that is clear. So this is the what the example is there in your graph. If you see that, say invoice A, invoice B, invoice C.
Can you write the last part completely? Can you repeat the last part, please?
Yeah. What happened? This Janam has done the sale to Gujarat people.
Okay.
Gujarat people has done again sale to within the state
Within the state.
at rate of rupees say 500.
Okay.
So that component he will charge SGST, CGST at the rate of 10%. The total liability would be 50-50. It means 100 rupees. 100 rupees, this is total liability. Out of this, CGST liability would be 50 rupees. So CGST liability will be first adjusted by IGST. Priority in the priority order. So you have adjusted how much Janam has charged you 40 rupees. So that 40 rupees you can offset it. That 10 rupees you will pay by cash. And here this SGST of 50 rupees you have to pay in cash because there is no offset of it. Got it?
My doubt is that 10 rupees you cannot offset against SGST.
Which one?
See, first you offset your 40 rupee liability of the Gujarat SGST पे करना है 10 rupees
पर इसमें है ही नहीं।
अच्छा वो you have to pay 50 rupees to 10 rupees तो SGST में offset नहीं हो सकता क्या?
नहीं।
वही पूछा। So IGST has to be offset only against CGST.
IGST is you can take the credit of IGST first utilize CGST then SGST.
Okay, मतलब 50 पूरा यूटिलाइज होने के बाद ही होता है.
Exactly. पूरा utilize होता है तब भी
इसमें 10 रुपए सेव करेंगे.
which one? But उसका credit 40 rupees था ना. Here IGST credit. Got it. Got it. Till then should we move to next slide?
आनंद अभी तो सब जो सेलर सेलिंग इट इन गुजरात राइट उसको जो
Within the state.
विद इन द स्टेट जो बेच रहा है
हाँ.
उसको वो पहले ट्रांजैक्शन का सीजीएसटी का वैल्यू और टैक्स अमाउंट कैसे पता चलेगा वो
नहीं बट वो इनवॉइस जनरल का इनवॉइस रहेगा ना पहले का यू डोंट गो विद द ए कि उसने जनरल में एट व्हाट वैल्यू ही हैज परचेज दैट इज इररिलेवेंट व्हाट जनरल हैज रेज्ड एन इनवॉइस ऑफ say 200 rupees that is relevant to him for this Gujarat based transaction. This layer A transaction is relevant at layer C.
He should have his purchase invoice.
का अलग से
That I will come back. This is all called place of supply rules. So that we will discuss it. Can I on this presentation?
So 1 minute. Excuse me.
आनंद जी
Yeah.
You said 100 liability of 100.
हाँ.
You adjusted 40 out of 50.
40 out of
10 you have
CGST
to
का
pay.
IGST का set off.
10 you have to give in cash.
Cash, exactly.
50 is still
It's
remaining.
that you have to pay in cash, both. SGST 50 rupees and CGST 10 rupees. You have to discharge it in cash. And Sharadi, as you mentioned regarding the set off, that we will cover it. Okay, what you can say that what is under the set off, you can clear it up. So this example I think cleared. If anything have further doubts, then do let's meet up after this presentation. So these are all the GST rules. Basically, there are 14 set of rules which cover registration, time of supply, payment. We will discuss it one by one, which is more relevant to your business day-to-day requirements. So first of all, online registration. I think all of has done the process of migration. Those who are existing holders, they have already migrated, and those who are looking for fresh registration, still that window is not open in GST. It will open by 25th of June. So here, who is liable for registration? Any person who is doing a taxable turnover of more than 20 lakhs is supposed to get registered under GST. There are other person also which is supposed to be getting registered irrespective of a turnover, e-com operator, non-resident, and you can see that person who is doing an interstate supply of transaction, they have to register irrespective of a turnover of 20 lakhs.
Can you go back?
Interstate supply with outside state.
Of what service or
Both. We are talking both. Both is now same, but only the what you mean is a few parameters are different.
So, in non-residents,
like a transporter?
taxable, if someone is there in US,
If someone is there in US and he has rendered the services in India, and if the service is consumed in India, then he is supposed to take a registration under casual taxable person. But in case if he has rendered services to a registered person, say your organization, then you are already registered, then you have to discharge under reverse charge mechanism for his liability. Both provisions are there.
Actually, just
Just like
for the
a taxable supply of goods or services. We are
Sorry?
insurance agents. तो हमको मिलेगा
Which one? Insurance agent के लिए I think LIC is representing all. They have to discharge it on behalf because there are so many insurance agents. They are not able to. What you mean to say that do this rigorous compliances. So LIC will take care it up under the reverse charge mechanism. Because previously also I think that you are not covered under service tax also.
Insurance companies will
No.
follow the practice.
Done. So places where registration is to be taken, that is also main important. In the state where you have done your taxable supply of goods, there is a concept of multiple registration also. You can take within the state 3-4 registration of GST. This is a sort of impact. Now cancellation of registration, the department has power to cancel your registration if you have not done your filing for 6 months. There is a no called of rolling period like in BNI. If it is called of 6 months, if you have not done your compliances, then your registration will be strike off.
sorry to interrupt, Anand, regarding registration. Now, we are doing business in multiple states.
Yes.
So, is the requirement for multiple state registration still there? Or can I operate nationwide from my organization?
I will get back to you. This is called place of supply rules.
Yeah.
So suppose if you are rendering services to say Delhi-based client, so how do you discharge this GST liability? So that I will tell you.
And secondly, regarding the unregistered vendor,
Unregistered.
who is under 20 lakhs turnover. So what applies to him in terms of GST liability for an unregistered vendor?
Doesn't apply to him. GST liability is ultimately your, what you mean to say that your onus to do that on behalf of unregistered
So
person.
if I have 3 concerns which are unregistered, what happens?
you have to pay the tax.
You have to pay the tax. That's it. Simple. RCM mechanism. Reverse charge. So what happens that I will show you what happens because of this GST. All corporates are going to deal with registered person. Because the moment you take the headache of an unregistered vendor,
You don't get set off, no?
no, set off is not an issue. You have to first raise an invoice on behalf of that unregistered person. You have to create it, generate it in the system with a unique number. And generation is an easy task. What is difficult is you have to classify his HSN code and the taxable. So you have to again go by the tariff कि इसको कौन सी category में fit in होगा. So that you
you
are
should not work with unregistered vendors.
exactly going to be in that way. So this is the phases of registration. That's how the registration is taken care. First verification, then again online application, acknowledgement. Then within 3 days, the people have allotted you this kind of form. I will show you. So first of all, everybody who has get the migrated provisional ID, do collect these forms from your chartered accountant. This is prima facie more important. Just wherever highlighter is there, so you can let us know कि आपका HSN code कौन सा specified हुआ है. Because to get the right HSN code, it's a difficult ball game. So that will be help you कि what your CA has filled your information while migrating to the GST.
What if you have multiple line of businesses?
So you
Does
can
the same registration number?
same registration. If you
HSN
want
code.
to diversify your business, open a different vertical, you can take a separate registration within the state also. But you have to bear the compliances of 37 returns. So it is up to you if you want to.
No, it's up to you. You're my chartered accountant.
So I will not recommend
For
it.
example, no, she has a valid question that we are into multiple services.
True.
We are into
Multiple services is different thing. Multiple business is different. Suppose if I am having a food business,
we are into multiple type of businesses also.
Okay.
So, which are being carried out under the same umbrella. So what happens then?
you can take there is a scope provision. You can add on your services, 10 services in the registration also, even more than that. Only you have to specify your HSN code while submitting a registration application.
Or the SAC code, right?
Sorry?
Or the SAC SSC code.
SAC. For services it is called service accounting code, and for goods it is called HSN. Harmonized
So we can
System
have a
Accounting.
number of SAC codes on
Yeah,
service
yeah.
category.
Till date, the government has carried forward this old codes only, but they will soon come up with the new SAC codes.
One more.
Yeah.
Firstly, written this ARN number is GST code or that provisional ID is GST?
No. ARN number is an application reference number. Provisional ID is going to be your GST number.
It's quite confusing.
Yes, it is.
Is it that after ARNs you would undergo some kind of process to have HSN or SAC?
Sorry, repeat.
If somebody already has an ARN and ARN, then the ARN is generated as some code, it is a provisional GST.
Provisional ID.
Now, after that comes the process of going for SAC.
No. It should be before that process.
So if somebody has a provisional GST number,
It means
he
they have
has
done
already
the
gone through, he has already gone
Yes,
through
but
the
only you have to take this copy of, you can say that entire submission from your chartered accountant, so then you will see that there is a no what you mean to say that wrong HSN code is classified. If it is so, then you have to amend it. Otherwise, again amendment will
Exactly
take
like
10
how in
days.
service tax you have your categories, right?
Yeah.
It's the same category. What is the closest to your business?
But service tax it is easy to identify. But if you go HSN code now in terms of goods, it is very difficult. I think Jayanam, you must be aware. To selection of an HSN code, it's like category, subcategory, and again subcategories.
So actually,
Even we also see still figuring out how to classify
correct.
the HSN code.
And the thing is that you have to be really accurate with that because if you do wrong entries into other things, your slab is different for every code. So if my goods are supposedly charged at 18% tax rate, and suppose if I have chosen the wrong HSN code, that HSN code might be having 28% tax rate. You have to go to
Otherwise, you have to specify only final
generating
product.
taxes.
While raising an invoice, you are not raise a client separate invoice of steel itna laga, cement itna laga. Then you have to raise a combined invoice, your final output, what you have done. You can fit it into the category of works contract services because all your services is related to immovable property. So you can go with that provision.
But work contract setup cannot be
We all get it on that.
No, I have a contract there. Payroll.
That is taken back if somebody is say that make an infrastructure for his furtherance of business. Suppose you are dealing with corporate and he has paid you GST on what you mean to say that this thing on your works contract services, then he is eligible to take the set off of it. That we will discuss it in input set of rules. Okay, what is furtherance of business? So otherwise there is no one is going to do a business with you if they are not eligible to get the set off. This is not the purpose of it. Yeah. HSN नहीं इसमें this is a service oriented. I missed it because some he has put it wrong. But that product wise you have to classify. Let's move this thing.
As for companies that service as well as sell.
Sorry?
We have that issue that we are
You
into.
have to have HSN as well as SSC.
Exactly. You have two options. You can select 10 HSN codes and 10 service accounting codes.
And put them into a single GST number.
Yes, put them into a single GST. If you are able to do this compliances of all the 10 services, 10 goods, 10 services.
I have a GST number. So I am into different type of business. So one is I'm selling off, like I'm doing the service, and secondly selling of the machine. I'm procuring the cups which will be under 18% service GST, and I'll be selling off the juices which will be under 12% GST. So how will I get the benefit for it?
Then it is a huge benefit for you. Your setup is always going
So
to be
one is like this. Secondly, I'm selling the machine at 28%. So that comes in GST plus 28%.
Then you can offset it. Now I didn't understand your query.
Yeah, actually,
What to say. You have concern regarding to your setup is at higher rate or
Set up with the higher rates and set up for the
but that should be the concern of government. If their people have given you at higher rate, say in case of a builder, I think builder has hugely benefited by the introduction of GST because of that. So that's why government has come specific anti money, what you mean, anti profiting provision for the builders, because they are eligible for set off at the rate of 28% while they have to pay 12%.
Good 8% of working capital.
Huge. And also that one scenario, builder are also recovering money in the, what you mean to say that taking the benefit of GST, customer you have to pay right now, otherwise you have to pay 12%. So right now the consumer is paying 4.5, 5.5, including VAT and service tax. So government has come up with this provision also. If you have not taken GST registration and something, what you mean to say that if your turnover is more than 20 lakhs, the government has right to grant you a suo motu registration while doing a survey that matters covered under. This is regarding to registration. I think almost all people have done the registration. So this is migration. I have already shared you the forms. So now this is important, tax time. It means time of you have to discharge your duty. At what time you have to discharge your duty is the earlier of three. So first we talking in terms of goods, then we will move to services. There are three parameters you have to see while what you mean to say that you have to discharge your liabilities. It should be earliest of the following. Either you raise the invoice, either the due date of the invoice, which is 30 days from the date of your completion of service, or when you receive the payment. In all three cases, either any earlier of the following, you have to pay your GST. Now take an example.
Sorry, I don't understand.
What happens is when you have to discharge your GST liability, it shows that either raising an invoice, then you have become liable. Either you receive of money from a client as an advance, then at that time you discharge it. And the third thing, even though you have not raised an invoice, even though you have not received the invoice, not receive a payment, but your service is completed, and within 30 days if you have not raised an invoice, then it's deemed to be accrued to you. You have to pay your GST liabilities.
So I
Now
have a
take an
question.
example.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So GST is going to be applicable from 1st of July.
exactly.
What about those agreements which have happened before 1st of July where the payment terms are 90 days?
Where the payment terms are?
90 days. So your vendor on the opposite side is liable to pay you only after 90 days or
Exactly.
only after 60
Then it will
days.
cover under, you can say that GST, because that is already, that will cover under service tax, because that is the, you can say that contract has already been done in the previous years, but only what you can say that a process, payment is received in the next year. You already booked the invoice in your books of accounts, you are going to discharge it before March, service tax liability.
Yes.
So that's it, before audit, sorry. And one thing, this will hit this provision those who are dealing in goods. Previously, for service provider, anyways, it is taxable on a receipt basis. But those who are dealing in goods, पहले क्या होता था? When the person receives an advance, so he will show in as an advance. He will not discharge his liability. He will discharge only liability when he sold the goods. Actual sale happens. But right now, this provision makes you liable at the earliest of the following.
So, but in case of exports, most of the
Exports is duty free. It's no GST.
no duty.
But there's a huge grey area out there where you say deemed to be executed.
Exactly.
I mean, where the hell is the documentary proof of me having executed something?
Sir,
But
just
your
for your
invoice-
knowledge, the terms exist even now. these same provisions exist even now in sales tax.
Exactly, in service tax also.
See, let's take an example of delivery of a service. If I have not received an advance, my banks do not reflect any money received. True. If I have not raised an invoice, my accounts do not reflect having invoiced the customer. True. But in the essence, and actual exercises, services have been rendered. And let's say if I run some kind of super dream company wherein there is no documentation or process documents are required for rendering the service.
See, the organization cannot be run by own whims and fancies. The opposite person to whom you have rendered the service, he will ask an invoice. If it doesn't ask an invoice, then it is out of the books of transaction. Then nobody can catch him. If he demand an invoice and you raise an invoice, he will take the credit of it. Even though if you can say that, what you mean, as per your choice, you can say that मैंने तो raise ही नहीं किया. But that person has already taken the credit, and that is all going to be reflected in your credit ledger. Okay, that person has taken credit on behalf of you. So then you're supposed to discharge it. GST is a system-driven process. You can't skip it. The moment you raise an invoice, the liability is accrued to you. You can't even skip it. So now, this is a quick example. Advance of received on 20th April, delivery of goods 20th June, date of liability. It will be date of liability. Skip this date of liability. What will be the date of payment of GST? Will be either earlier of. So then it will be 20th April.
So against the advance, the GST applicable will be against the advance amount.
Advance amount, obviously. While receiving an advance,
Not the invoice amount.
Not an invoice amount,
Actually.
actually.
Okay.
So what happened is that when you received an advance, say suppose you received an advance of 100 rupees, so you immediately go to the GSTN portal, generate receipt voucher towards it, and then give it to that person. That person will take the credit against that advance. And when you raise a final invoice, say 200 rupees, then you have to give the reference of this receipt voucher number. Then automatically it will calculate on your balance liabilities. So this is in case of services, same thing, time of supply. In case of supply, it is either of the following. Now this is the main.
What about if you receive advance from an individual who doesn't have any, like end user?
Then you have to discharge. If it is a business transaction, you have to discharge GST on behalf of an individual.
So he gives me advance. I have to register log in the invoice or advance, right?
Exactly.
The invoice will be
Your sale is happened, then you have to discharge it. No other option. The seller is supposed to pay. This is something. It is not an expenditure side. What you are talking is on sales side. On sales side, previously also you have no choice. Suppose आपने sale किया, being a registered
advance के सामने वो invoice नहीं generate करते ना?
नहीं, advance के सामने आपको receipt voucher generate करना है. GST terminology. That is something new.
Okay.
Invoice is different, receipt voucher is different, debit note, credit note, all goes by this. If you generated first invoice, then you're supposed to do any sort of amendment in that. You can't amend that invoice. That is already locked in system. You have to raise a debit note or credit note towards it. And that is in case of reverse charge mechanism. What people are, what you mean to say that, wondering when to pay, when we have booked an expenditure, say from an unregistered person. At that time also your liability is going to be crystallized. So what is the date? Either you received certain goods or services, date on which payment is entered in the books of account, payment is either debited, and this is 31st day. In case suppose if I raise an, suppose if I receive an goods and he doesn't raise me an invoice, so I have to pay by 31st from the date of the invoice by the supplier. The GST on behalf of unregistered person to whom you are dealing with on reverse charge basis. So now understand this process. How does the payment process works under GST? There are three things. There are three ledgers is going to be generated in your GSTN portal. One is cash ledger, one is credit ledger, one is liability register. So cash ledger is comprises of, cash means what you have paid monetarily, and credit ledger means what your SGST, IGST, CGST. Regarding to credit, you can offset against only taxes, but while cash ledger can be adjusted against interest, fees, penalty. It means that your credit cannot be adjusted against your interest. Your interest you have to pay in cash. If you skip any of your GST installment payments. That's it. Now let's move to our second presentation. Till that